Hi guys, welcome to the show. My name is Seb Ostrovich, aka the voice of the people, and this is the Weightlifting House podcast. Welcome to the Weightlifting House news show with your host Seb Ostrovich, the voice of the people. Now, I have a new idea for the news show, specifically for the news show, not the Monday show. Something that I'm going to try and add on to the end of every single show. So what it is every single week I spend, a certain amount of time on Instagram scrolling through, looking at all the amazing lifts, noting down and saving all the best lifts for, of course, the news show. And a lot of the time I see these great lifts, people really fighting to make PRs and sets of squats and snatches and whatever. But because they're not professional athletes, I don't feel like I can really mention them on the news show, which is a shame because I can see the passion and energy that they're bringing forth with their lifts. So what I wanted to do to kind of credit those athletes, just these random normal weightlifters like you or I, is just to pick 3 of my favorite lifts from Instagram, from the general population, to mention on this show so that people start getting the credit they deserve when they make these amazing lifts. So that's what I'm going to do. This week, I only had this idea literally a few hours ago, so I'm going to go with 3 lifters from the Pendlay Ward just because I've seen them lift all week on the Facebook group. So I'm going to talk about them at the end. But that's one of my ideas that I'm going to start doing. I think it's a nice way to kind of try and involve the weightlifting community a little bit more into the Weightlifting House podcast. But I certainly know as a lifter, I would have loved it if any of my certainly mediocre lifts were mentioned on a weightlifting podcast. So that is the plan. If you want to be one of those people, then I guess tag me on Instagram. That's probably the easiest way to get my attention. But probably I'll just scroll through and see people. That's the way I think I'm going to go ahead with it. Anyway, let's move on to the professional athletes, and then of course at the end, like I said, I'll go through the 3 top lifts from your average athletes of the week. Shall I call it average athletes, or I don't know if that's quite rude almost to call an athlete average. I'm not sure what I'll go for, but I'll come up with some kind of cool name for this. Anyway, so Nathan Damron, aka the Freedom Fridge, jerked 195 kilos out of the rack. He has done over 200 kilos before, but historically Nathan isn't great out of the rack, so this 195 is definitely promising for him. Now, for those of you who don't know, Nathan is called the Freedom Fridge to draw a comparison with Ilya Ilyin, who for a time was also known as a fridge. But actually, long before Ilya, the rugby player Jonah Lomu, RIP, was known as the Fridge. So I grew up watching him. He played for the All Blacks. He was on the wing, and for those of you who don't know him, he was pretty much unstoppable for a long period of time. At a body weight of 124 kilos, he ran the 100 meters in sub 11 seconds. He was a freak amongst freaks. So having him run at you really was like being hit by a fridge. So I think he was originally the first athlete to be called the Fridge. It then moved on to Ilya because, of course, he resembled a fridge. And now Nathan Damron is the Freedom Fridge. Now, what's crazy about Wes Kitts is how quickly he gets strong after time off. He took a full month off weightlifting after his competition in Anaheim at Worlds, where, of course, he did do spectacularly well. And he is nearly at full strength again after maybe a month of training properly. At least as far as squats are concerned. He hit a very strong-looking 260 kilos by 3, which was certainly not maximal. I want to say that Wes has done 270 kilos for a set of 5 before, but this 260 kilo triple didn't look too far off that based off the speed. And it seemed like maybe only last week that the Cal Strength crew were doing sets of 10, so that's extremely impressive for Wes. Now, Harrison Maris has phenomenal technique, but he definitely isn't only a technician. He has not only some of the strongest legs in his weight class in the world, but also in the USA regardless of weight class. He front squatted 200 kilos for a set of 9. He weighs around, I think he's about 80 kilos right now. He may well now be up at about 81, but 200 kilos for a set of 9. Based off the first rep, I'd like to say that his max front squat must be, it must be around it must be near 250 kilos. I mean, the speed of it is absurd. It was so fast that he went touch and go for the first 5 reps. Now, Harrison did do something even more spectacular than that this week, but I'm going to leave it to the end because it is probably one of the most impressive things I've ever seen, so I'll leave that till later on. Over at MASH Elite, Hunter Elam, Trav's 69 kilo female lifter, jerked a huge 125 kilos. I wouldn't be surprised if 2018 is her year. She's so strong in the squat. I've seen her hit massive weights, I think at least 170 kilos, maybe even for more than a single. I really hope that she can kind of show that strength off in competition this year. Now, as always, I am buzzing to announce anything concerning one of my favourite lifters, Andrea Romnow, the 2008 105 Olympic champion and world record holder of absolutely everything. So he snatched 160 kilos for a double and clean and jerk 200 kilos. And they look pretty maximal. So it's kind of confusing because, of course, he has snatched 200 kilos in competition before. But I think it's worth at least discussing the possibility that Romnow is not on drugs. I'm not saying that he was never on drugs, but right now, perhaps he's not on drugs. I mean, he's been training seriously for 6 months now. And when Ilya came back to training after the Olympics in 2012, he came back in 2014. He clean and jerked 240 kilos in Almaty just 8 months after returning to the sport. So I don't think it's a stretch to presume that Ilya was on drugs during that time. But maybe Romnow is predicting the likelihood of a clean sport, or perhaps he wants to do whatever he can do naturally before gearing up. But I certainly don't think it's a stretch to think that one of the best athletes, one of the best weightlifters ever, can snatch 160 kilos for 2 after just 6 months back in the sport as a clean athlete. I mean, there are even several Americans who've done this, even in the 94 kilo class. So I can certainly believe that Romnow clean is capable of doing that. Who knows? I suppose this is just general speculation, but I feel like putting my money on the fact that right now Romnow is a clean athlete. Now, Morgan McCullough, the 14-year-old from MASH, cleaned 160 kilos. He actually did it, I think, a few times this last week, every single time a PR, or at least, the first time a PR. But he is absolutely on fire right now. He still has the greatest 10-year period of training ahead of him, which is obviously very exciting. When Travis Mash, Morgan's coach, was on the podcast, he said that he had high hopes for Morgan, including super heavyweight world records. So extremely high goals for Morgan. I don't want to put any limitations on him. He's clearly amazing, but I guess only time will tell. Okay, so if you are built tall, slim, long-limbed, kind of lanky, then this one is certainly for you. So that build has never really been hugely conducive to weightlifting, or more specific, I suppose, squatting, and even more specifically, front squatting. Well, Colombia's young 94 kilo lifter Jonathan Rivas front squatted 240 kilos with some of the skinniest legs I've ever seen, either in or outside of weightlifting. Now, with the back squat, depending on where you hold the bar on your back, there is some, and I mean a tiny little bit of wiggle room to debate the fact that the quads might not be the prime mover. But in the front squat, the prime movers are non-debatably the quads. And the fact that he was able to do this with, as far as I could tell, no quads at all, was absolutely amazing. You guys probably need to check out that video. That is Jonathan Rivas. Jonathan is J-H-O-N, not J-O-H-N. So J-H-O-N-A-T-O-N, Rivas. And you will see a man squat 240 kilos without any quads. Now, Bodhi Santavi, the Canadian junior 94 kilo lifter, power snatched 150 kilos. A very impressive lift for a 94 kilo lifter. I guess in the North American continent, you rarely kind of see that over there on that side of the world. I'm almost certain that he will snatch over 170 kilos in 2018. I really think that he has some huge promise. So I was scrolling through Instagram, as I do regularly, and I came across a video of a young kid. He was probably 6 or 7 years old, and he was snatching 40 or 45 kilos. It's almost irrelevant how much he was doing it, but he moved so incredibly well. He had the most amazing bottom position in the squat. It was seriously so impressive how fearless these young kids are. They just haven't yet learnt, and I'm purposely saying the word learnt instead of developed. They haven't learnt what it is to fear the barbell. They are fearless. Anyway, I would really recommend watching it. The video was on an IG page called Weightlifting Love. On the same note, and I only just saw this a few minutes ago, I saw a video of a 7-year-old girl with even better technique than this young boy, snatching 47 kilos, and she moved absolutely perfectly. It really is amazing to see someone at that age who has already developed perfect movement, essentially. It's like Louis Simmons often says, is that weightlifting technique isn't difficult. There are little kids overseas who have already learnt it. They've already learnt it perfectly, so stop making it so difficult. I guess these kids are certainly showing us up when it comes to technique. Now, some relatively big news in the weightlifting world is that Jessica Lucero, Catalyst Athletics' best athlete, is leaving. As far as I can tell, there were absolutely no ill feelings between her and Catalyst. And in fact, I've always kind of believed, and I think I've seen on social media enough, that she absolutely loved working with the Everetts. I believe she worked specifically with Amy Everett, but of course I'm sure she spent a lot of time training under Greg Everett as well. I think she was trying to say in her Instagram post that it was basically just time to move on. I'm not sure who she will have coaching her from now on, but she did say that she was moving to Cleveland. Her international results over the last few years really haven't changed much. And with 2 years to go until the Olympics, and with her age, I think she's kind of low 30s in terms of her age, she may well have figured that she would need a switch up on things if she wants to take a final stab at her Olympic dreams. Now, over in China, it's clear to see that Tian Tao has taken some time off. He hit a very, very slow 270 kilo back squat. It truly looked like a real max this time, which is bizarre because we've seen such heavy squats from him in the past. In the past, actually, as an 85 kilo lifter, he has paused back squatted 300 kilos and squatted 310 kilos, both very routinely and certainly not truly maximally. Sticking with squats and sticking with raw squats, Evan Rutledge, aka Gus Brooks, back squatted a high bar, no belt, no wraps, 300 kilos. I would give him the no squat win for the week, but James Moser beat absolutely everyone this week, squatting something, it looked around 220 kilos, with no belt, no sleeves, and no arm. Since breaking his arm, he's been squatting with his bad arm down by his side, just holding the bar with one arm. So I'm going to give him the squat win for the week. Now, whilst we're on the topic of squats, Nathan Damron, the squat king of the USA, at least of the USA weightlifting, hit a great 309 kilo back squat. This is just 9 kilos short of his all-time PR of 700 pounds, which I think, off the top of my head, is 317 kilos, I want to say. 318 kilos, something like that. Over at California Strength, their self-named young buck, Jaden Washington, snatched 144 kilos. So I want to make a call now on this podcast that despite Jaden being in a strong club of lifters, he lifts alongside Wes Kitts, Dylan Cooper, Rob Blackwell, I want to make the call that Jaden will be the second best lifter at Cal Strength by the end of 2018. I'm calling it because I believe it. I just think he's going to overtake Dylan in the snatch soon and Rob in the clean and jerk soon, and maybe even Dylan in the clean and jerk soon. And I believe that by the end of 2018, he will be the second best lifter there. Now, over in Spain, the 77 kilo lifter Alejandro Gonzalez Baez power snatched 130 kilos for a double, followed by a hang snatch. Really impressive lifting for any 77 kilo lifter out there. Lydia Valentin is back training hard after her win in Anaheim, where she truly dominated the field. She jerked a distressingly easy-looking 130 kilos, if I'm honest. I say distressing because it looked so much easier than any time I've ever jerked 130 kilos. But with legs as strong as her, I would really love to know what her all-time jerk is. I imagine it's probably around 160 kilos. We have, of course, seen her jerk in the mid-50s, but I would really love to see her kind of push to max out her split jerk. Okay, so I'm at the point in the podcast where I want to do this thing where I mention the 3 average Joes, the 3 kind of lifters who are just hustling, trying to become high-level athletes, but really at the moment are just kind of lifting for the love of the sport. So first off, we have Rodrigo Giraldo. So he push pressed 140 kilos from behind the neck. So I know a lot of you are thinking that I was meant to be doing average lifters, and a 140 kilo push press isn't that average. I know that, but he's still not a professional lifter, so I want to give him a shout out. I've been following Rodrigo for a while now, and we actually talk sometimes on Instagram, but his progress for the last few months has been absolutely crazy. This 140 push press was a huge PR. I have no doubt when you look over his Instagram that he's going to continue to progress for a long time, as long as he keeps putting in the work that he currently is. He also posted an awesome video of 3 sets of 5 on the no contact snatch and 90 kilos. You know you're a true savage when you go for a set of 5 without contact. You can follow Rodrigo Geraldo at rod_92. So another set that has come to mind is, that I'm going to mention on this little segment, is from Seth Dalkey. Seth is a good friend of mine. I've trained with him a few times out in America. He's on the online team. So to put this lift into context, he got injured on the final day of the weightlifting winter camp. We were all going to max out. Everything was going well for him. His current PR snatch is 125, and so basically he wanted 126 or 130. And as we were heading to the gym, we drove up. It was cold out in Kansas. We literally were about a meter from the door, and he slipped, fell on his back, and injured his leg, and literally could barely walk. So it's been now 2.5 weeks, I think. I think once or twice he's gone in and power snatch 50 and power clean 70, but essentially he's done nothing. But kind of motivated by the fact that there were some guys snatching sets of 5 at heavy weights on the online team, he decided to go straight in at 106 kilos, which is, 19 kilos shy of his best. And he had a crack at it. And I'd love to tell you that he made all 5 lifts, but unfortunately he didn't. He made 4, however, which is just ridiculous when you take 2.5 weeks off lifting. So he definitely gets a shout out on the Weightlifting News Show. You can follow him. He's a great lifter at Seth_Dalkey. Dalkey is spelled Dahlke. Thirdly, we have Joshua Gibson, who is, he's the owner of the I've tongue twisted there. The Philosophical Weightlifting Podcast, a great podcast if you hadn't heard it. I've actually done an episode on there myself, which was a lot of fun because instead of either interviewing someone or reporting the news, I was able to talk about kind of the rise of Weightlifting House. But anyway, Joshua Gibson did a 3+1 on the clean and jerk with 122 kilos. And as a lifter who is not really well known for his leg strength, that is a great improvement for him. His progress over the last few months has been absurd. He's not actually on the Pendlay WOD, but he does do some of Glenn's private programming. He also hang snatched, I want to say it was 116, though it could have been 115 recently. Progress is going well. I would recommend following him. You can find him at purposedrivenperformance. I have just realized that the one lift that was the most important lift of this whole week is the one lift that I've forgotten. I did say that I was going to leave it to the end, so I suppose I can get away with that. I planned on doing it before the average athlete segment. I like that, actually, average athlete. I think I'm going to stick with that, but I'll do it now. So, Harrison Maris, as I've mentioned so many times, he is the most mentioned name on this podcast. He went and did an impromptu competition weighing about 80 kilos. He opened up his clean and jerk at 190 kilos. Bearing in mind, 190 was the American record in the clean and jerk before he turned up. He opened with it and smacked it. Smacked it? I was going for a mixture there of smashed and smoked. He smacked it, or he smoshed it. But he did one of those things, and he made it. It was a great lift. He then went for 195 and absolutely destroyed it. That equals his best. And then he went for a 200 kilo clean and jerk. Which, 200 kilos is obviously, it's a monumental number just because of what it represents. But also, I don't think I've ever seen an American 77 ever clean 200 kilos. I remember Travis Cooper and James Tatum both giving it shots, but they weren't able to get under it. But he was able to get under it. He stood it up incredibly easily. As I mentioned earlier in the podcast, he did front squat that for a set of 9 earlier in the week. And he attempted the jerk, locked it out. It looked for at least a second as though he'd made it. But as he was bringing his feet together, he did unfortunately lose it in front. But, the fact that he did that, he wasn't peaked or tapered. It was impromptu. He's in the middle of a cycle. The fact that he was able to clean it and attempt the jerk and come very close to making it is just absurdly amazing. I'm so excited to see how he does in the coming months, years, quads. I mean, it's going to be amazing to follow his progress. If you want to see those lifts, I did put all 3 of them up on my Instagram, Weightlifting House, so you can see those there. His 190, his 195, and his 200. I believe that's everything from me for this week. Of course, follow me on Instagram and Snapchat, WL_house, where I just snap things that I'm doing in my daily life, like lifting weights, recording podcasts, and doing a little bit of business online. So if you want to follow me on those platforms, please do. And of course, if you want to be mentioned on the Average Athlete section of the show, tag me in one of your videos, and I'll see if it's worthy of such an amazing segment. Anyway, thanks once again for tuning in, and I will speak to you all next week.